Are you ready to unlock the secrets of brand innovation? Here you'll discover unexpected ways to make your brand soar in value. Get ready for inspiring stories, actionable tips, and insights you'll need to build your brand and learn an entirely new way to fly. This is the Hummingbird Effect. And now your host, Wendy Coulter.
Hi everyone, I'm Wendy Coulter, and I help CEOs and marketing leaders unlock the hidden power of their brands. For years, business leaders have focused on marketing tactics, but what's more important and truly matters is building a strong brand. Think of it like the Hummingbird Effect. Small innovations in branding can lead to unprecedented results in other areas of the business that are completely unexpected. That can be increased valuation, a stronger culture, and marketing messaging that resonates. Welcome to the show today, everybody. I'm here today with Hannah from my office at Hummingbird Creative Group. She's my marketing strategist. Good morning, Hannah. Good to see you today.
Good morning, Wendy.
So sometimes we start off with fun facts. I'd love another fun fact from you because I learn new things about you all the time. So what you got going on today?
Me, a fun fact? Oh, what else is going on? Dang.
Does your dog have a cute outfit for the snow? Because that would be my guess at a fun fact about Hannah.
He does. She has about 4 or 5 different snows. And for anyone that's listening, it's North Carolina snowing here. So we can see a few flakes. So we'll take advantage of it. But yeah, she has snow boots. She has snow jackets, snow sweaters. So we look real cute.
Are they all pink?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, they are.
Yes. So that's the fun fact about Hannah that I just dug out. Pink is her favorite color. And another fun fact, Hannah and I both went to NC State. And the original color for NC State was pink, correct,
Pink
Hannah?
and blue.
Before it was red. So, fun fact. Well, I am so excited today about our guest, Roy Osing, and we're going to see what his fun fact is today, too. But before I do that, I just want to say, Roy, I was on your LinkedIn, and first of all, there are these words, be different or be dead. And I'm a big fan of differentiation, and so I'm excited to hear what you have to say about that today. But the other thing that's on your LinkedIn that I'm just going to use as the quick intro to our guest today is that you took a startup internet company to $1 billion in sales. That is so amazing. I bow down to you as a owner of a business for 30 years. I can't imagine what that took. It's something different than what I have in my DNA. And so I am just so excited about your practical and proven, audacious, unheard of ways to produce high-performing businesses and successful careers. I know I'm going to learn a lot from you today. So I'm going to toss it over to you to do a better introduction of yourself. Give us a little bit of your background and tell us a fun fact, please.
Well, I mean, I guess all I can say is I'm kind of like your classic disruptor. I think I've been this way. I think I got it from my mother 100 years ago, and she was a member of 12 in a family, and the only way she could get what she wanted is to kind of like fight for it, be different, to attract attention, and to move forward. And this is all reflective on my part. I mean, I didn't really realize this until I had started to get the question that you asked me. And when I think about it, yeah, I've always been the person that has had utter disdain for the status quo, if I can put it that way. It's not comfortable for me. I mean, what's comfortable for me is uncomfortableness. That's all there is to it. And so I tend to disrupt. Sometimes, from a personal point of view, that can get rather challenging. But nevertheless, and we can talk about this, the sort of disruption that is driven me has led me to this whole notion of be different or be dead. And just to frame that for you, it's not just about being different for the sake of being different. Okay, like what I will say to you is I really don't care about the color of your skin. I don't care about your sexual preferences. I don't care about your pronouns. I don't care about any of that, right? What I care about is the way that you are trying to be unique to satisfy what others care about. And so it's all about serving, but serving with a purpose to differentiate, to be different, right? To wow, to attract, to surprise, to blow them away, to create gasp worthiness, rave worthiness. And so that's the whole notion. And that's kind of like what I've been doing. And in business, at one point, as the internet was just coming in IP technology, because I sat in a telephone company at the time, right? Remember the days when telephone companies were a monopoly? Well, I was in that world, and the internet came, and I was asked to lead a company to take advantage of the opportunities that the internet presented. And that's kind of what got me going. But the same mindset, okay, in terms of being different and looking for ways to differentiate, drove me. But what I discovered is existing textbook traditional approaches were not helpful to me. Okay, because they assumed so many things that were wrong. They assumed that the world was predictable. They assumed that the linear equations, right, could actually drive a meaningful forecast. They assumed that you could formularize human behavior, which of course are all frickin' nonsense. Okay, in my world, that never happened. And so I had to recreate. This is why I resonated with the hummingbird effect. I had to recreate ourselves with a series of innovations that lit fires in people. And we had this army of advocates, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. We had this army of advocates marching, okay, within this whole framework of being different and innovating to eventually, we got to $1 billion in annual sales. We didn't start out with that as a target, but we just ended up there. And today, that business is $18 billion a year. And I like to think that my team had a very, very small role, right, in terms of establishing the traction that eventually realized that sort of situation. And so, Roy disrupts. Roy tries to get people to be different. Roy doesn't like herds. Roy likes standing out, getting noticed in a way that people care about. That's who I am. And that's what kind of like drove me to be a small innovator, which resonates with the hummingbird effect. Sorry to carry on, but that's who I am.
Oh, no, that's fabulous, Roy. Thank you so much for sharing. So talk to us about a specific instance where you saw what seemed to be a small change in a marketing initiative or branding initiative turn into something that had a really significant effect in the business in another area.
Well, I'm going to come at it a different way because I'm not a kind of a tactical guy.
Go
I'm going to
figure.
come at it in a different way. I'm not a tactical guy. I hate tactics without understanding context. And so like I have people calling me all the time and say, well, what do you think? How do you think AI will apply to business? What do you think about my social media strategy and all that stuff? And I say, I have no idea because what I need to understand is what you're trying to be when you grow up. I'm trying to understand your strategic context within which we can then have a conversation about AI and all the other tactics. And so what I would say to you is my innovative process was all based and started with the fact that I had to create my own planning process, and I called it a strategic game plan. Okay, it's called a game plan because the intent is to execute, not to pontificate. All right, the intent is to get your feet moving, not to consider a whole bunch of theoretical possibilities. So what you're going to hear me say quite often is kind of like, you got to put the textbook down, guys, if you really want to grow your business. So anyways, it started out, I created as an innovation, this game planning process, okay, which can be done in 48 hours, right? And it's created your strategy by answering 3 questions. How big do you want to be? Which is really a question about top line revenue growth over the next 24 hours. 5-year plans do not exist because everybody puts everything off to the 4th year. And that's where the hockey stick comes from. Okay. So forget about it. So it's 24 months. I look at it as 24 periods of 30 days. And it's important because that puts the focus on what? On execution, right? Success doesn't come from the plan. It comes from execution, right? So how big do you want to be? Second question is, who do you want to serve and what do they crave? Who do you want to serve is basically saying, where are you going to get the money, right? And so the process tries to minimize the number of customer groups you target, right? Because you don't have unlimited resources. You just don't have that. I mean, ideally, if you're looking for $5 million, ideally, you think you've got one customer group that has the latent potential to get you there. It doesn't happen that often, but I start out that way because if you end up at 3, it's a lot better than assuming it's 20. Okay, so all that does is spread you too thin. You don't have the bandwidth, etc. The cravings piece is exceedingly important. And this is a hummingbird in every respect, okay? Because what it basically says is people do not buy on needs these days. And yet Marketing 101 and everything else talks about things like what you need. Well, the reality is today, most people's needs, quote unquote, are satisfied, right? They want more than that, okay? And so what I've come up with is this notion called craving. And what is a craving? Wow. A craving is something you desire. A craving is something you covet. A craving is something you lust for. And so it's got absolutely nothing due to the fact that you need internet and you may need 350 megabytes down that stream. It's much more than that. And it's a very emotional side of the kind of like customer engagement process. And so what I had to do, my reasoning was, I think if we do this right, we're going to get a lot of people paying me lots of money because people pay premium prices on cravings. And they're also going to stay with me because there's nobody else playing in that space, right? Everybody's in the need space. Roy's going to be disrupting that, going to go to the craving space. So the cravings piece was a huge innovation. And we actually had cravings manuals. We had people, okay, who were compensated as part of their performance plan. Show me your cravings, especially sales, right? So we got the top 10 customers. I'd say, okay, show me your cravings file. And I don't care whether it's electronic or paper. I don't care. Show me that you're trying to discover cravings, because that was the source, okay, of the engagement process that eventually led to what? Oh, gee, transactions. Oh, gee, revenue. Oh, gee, getting me closer to $1 billion, right? So that was the second piece. The third part was how you're going to win. And this is where with the differentiation piece, I had to really work at this. It basically says, given the customer groups that you've just identified, okay, because how to win isn't about the market, it's about the customer groups that you've just identified, because that's where you're trying to focus your marketing activity. How are you going to compete and win? Now, here's where I ran into a whole lot of issues, and I got to tell you, nothing has changed. I'm talking like 3 decades later, and it hasn't changed, right? Maybe that's a failure on my part. In any event, how do people try to get at the differentiation piece today? Well, they use what I call claptrap to do it. A claptrap expression is we are the best at, we are better than, we are the market leader at, and it goes on and on and on, right? So that's not only claptrap, it's aspirational because it can't be proven, and it's narcissistic. It's your view of you. It's not the customer's view of you. All right. And so I said, well, how on earth? And by the way, I didn't tag them narcissistic when I was working, right? But I knew it was. It's not until later that I try and package all of this stuff together that it occurred to me, wow, we got some pretty meaningful labels here. So I came up with what I call the only statement. The only statement isn't try to be better or best. It's you need to find a way to be the only one that does what you do, satisfying the cravings of the people you've chosen to serve, who you think have the latent potential to deliver your growth goals. So you see the sequence? That's the innovation. Nobody uses that. Now, what does an only statement look like? Well, what it does is it focuses you on trying to be the only one that does what you do in there. It's binary. It's black and white. You can measure it, you can feel it. And so what you do is come up with a draft, you test it to make sure that you're not blowing smoke and you're not hallucinating, that this is an actual real statement that addresses compelling customer demand. And so the answer to those 3 questions gives you your strategy. So that was the very first innovation, okay, that I had to create in order to get this company moving. Okay. Now there was a lot of people, particularly in the academic world, because at the time I was teaching MBA students. When I started talking to them about this, they just went apoplectic, and so did the professors. Like, you can't find it in a textbook except this one. Okay. This one you can find it in. This is my latest book. You can find it in there. So I started doing this, and it was really, really hard because there's such momentum and inertia out there built on applying traditional academic principles. Okay, so here comes Roy disrupting all that, says, look, the efficacy is not in the plan. It's in doing something with the plan. So why are we spending so much time on the plan? People generally would spend 80% of their time on the plan, 20% on execution. And I flipped that. I said, no, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to spend 20% on the plan, 80% on the execution elements. Loosen up on the plan, tighten up on execution. And so that planning process I just described can be done in 48 hours. It can be done meaningfully in 48 hours. And I used it, right? And people were really uncomfortable because, don't forget, we're all taught to get it perfect. So here's my question. How can you come up with a perfect plan in a world that is imperfect? In a world that is unpredictable, stochastic, right? It delivers body blows on businesses every 30 hours, for heaven's sakes. And so get real. So this process gets the plan just about right. And we learn through execution whether we were close to getting it right or not. All right. And so we iterated along the way. So that was kind of like the first Hummingbird and I tell you, it had just such a cool effect because it allowed us to have the bandwidth to start to explore execution elements, which really were the fun things. Okay. Like cut the crap, like kill dumb rules, like line of sight leadership, like hiring for Goosebumps. Oh, that's a fun one. Like, fingerprint leadership. And so all of these innovations, which were really predicated on lighting people's fires, came from that basic planning notion of heading west, learning where you're going to end up as a function of execution. And there's just a wealth of fun involved in every one of the smaller innovations because it really does address what your theme is all about, about adding people to your journey. And I would always say, tell me if this works, guys. I mean, you told me you wanted to have some fun doing this. Okay, let's go kill some dumb rules. What do you think about that? Now, a dumb rule is a rule the customers hate because it was made by auditors, by inside people to control the customer engagement process. Is this resonating with you? Oh yeah, go into any store and I'll bet you any money you will run head on into a rule that you hate. And it may be about payment, it may be about returns, it may be about anything. The fact of the matter is, every time you run into those, you feel less loyal. In fact, you're pissed off and you tell a lot of people about it. Right? So I reasoned if you could cleanse the inside, get rid of the dumb rules, what's going to happen? Oh, gee, we're going to have better engagements. We're going to have better customer experiences. They will continue to transact with us. And guess what? Oh, gee, revenues continue to flow. And so we had dumb rules committees. We had dumb rules contests. We had dumb rules everything. And I would show up in a workplace with a long sleeve white T-shirt with dumb rules written on it and a big circle and an X through it. Well, let me tell you, my executive colleagues had a lot of questions about why we were doing these sorts of things. But Yeah, that was one of my favorites. I got to tell you, it was a great one because my background's Scandinavian, so anything to do with the pillaging and stuff like that is just like so we pillaged rules that didn't make any freaking sense to customers, and we got rid. You know what? We probably got rid of 35%. Can you imagine any business that was able to reduce their rules and internal policies and procedures by 30%? Just think about what happens to that internal delivery machine in terms of viscosity. It goes through the roof. And so the value delivery system, right, is made more efficient. And guess what that translates into? More sales, more revenue, and a happier Roy.
Roy, can you share with us what you were selling or what the company sells today? What kind of?
Yeah, I mean, the particular company that I ran was a data company. And so it was a
Okay.
data and internet. So what we basically did is we pioneered our entry into taking advantage of IP technology for both consumers and for business. And so we had that B2B and B2C kind of bifurcation, if you will. But the advantage we had was we came out of a telephone company. We still owned customers who used our voice services. And let me tell you, did we ever leverage that? So what we did is, of course, created value packages that integrated voice, data, and actually the data company, we morphed into the television company as well using IP technology. Okay, and so basically it now has, and it had then as we did it, voice services, which was declining, data services with the internet, which was increasing, and optic television services, which was also growing as well. And so it was all based on a fundamental precept called "Let's unleash the power of the internet," and that was kind of our guiding. You can call it I guess it is a brand statement. So because we
Yeah.
came up with this notion called "The future is friendly." That was a brand that we introduced. I got to tell you, we introduced this in 2002. That brand, if you Google TELUS advertising, guess what you will see? You will see animals, okay, which is the personification of love and friendliness, etc., which was we used as part of the Future is Friendly advertising campaign and branding campaign. And today, and this is unbelievable, that campaign is rocking. I introduced it in 02.
That's awesome.
02. How many campaigns do you know of that are going strong, after 23 years? Not too many.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so you started talking about innovations, and I think you named 4 of them. And I think Hannah and my eyebrows both raised when you said hire for Goosebumps. So I
Gotcha.
want to thank you back for that one. I just want to learn a little bit more about that innovation because I'm assuming that's around people and HR. And so talk to us a little bit about that culture play.
Yeah, it's funny. That's one that people actually they scratch their head at as to what the hell, and they really think it's like. So here, okay. So again, what is the context? Like, we didn't do it just to do it. We didn't do it because it was a cool thing to think about. The point I want to make to you, it was not. It was a tactic that was informed by strategy, and the strategy was, in this new world, how are we going to create gasp-worthy experiences? How are we going to create rave-worthy experiences for customers? People speak about it differently than I do. They talk about exceeding expectations and all that kind of textbook language. Well, I don't talk that way because gasp-worthy, actually think about that. Close your eyes and think about somebody who can't breathe, who's had their breath taken away. Imagine the euphoria of the moment when that particular thing happens, right? That was the vision. So how do we do that? Well, it occurred to me that you can't do that unless you have people who like human beings. Because typically in the service business, right, that's pretty fundamental, right? If you don't like a Homo sapien, it's not likely that you're going to be able to create a gasp-worthy experience with them because they will figure you out. They know that you're phony, that you'd rather be doing programming or taking inventory. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably your fit. So the notion is, how do we find these people? How do we find these people that have this natural, God-given, innate desire to take care of other people? Because my reasoning was, if I can do this, I'm going to get 2 hits on it, right? I'm going to get all of that warmth, right? And strategic caring with the customer through the customer engagement process. That will lead to not just buying, it will lead to loyalty, sustainability, referrals, and yes, transactions. Okay. But the going in was to make them go, oh my God, I can't believe I just got goosebumps again. Oh my God, I can't believe what just happened to me. And by the way, we measured. Did you get an oh my God? We measured all that stuff. Anyway,
talk about that. Talk about the measuring a little bit.
Well,
Roy,
I haven't finished
yeah.
the process,
Okay.
Wendy. I know this is long, but I got to take you
No,
through
no.
the process. So the process of how do I do that, right? So we changed, and I actually did this on the run because I tried it one day and it worked, and so we tagged it. And so what we did is we would have a panel. I, as president, would be part of the interview panel with my with the direct report, okay, in whose department, the recruitment was being done, the job opening existed. And so here you have, and let's choose customer service, because we did this with everything. We did it with marketing people, we did it with sales people, we did it with audit people, because really caring for people is not just a customer service requirement, right? If you want to make your business a human business and have humanity injected into what you do, you need an environment with that kind of person. So here you have this poor little person sitting across the table who wants to be a customer service rep. The president of the company's on the other side with a manager. So it's pretty intimidating, but it also shows that person how important the position is if you can get that sort of level of interest. And so what I would do is we'd have nice leads, blah, blah, blah. But the interview was not about skills and competencies. Okay, because we'd already read that. And if we had any issues, we already would have cleared that. I didn't care about that. I wanted to get inside the person's head and figure out if they could be part of this caring team. So I had 2 questions. First question, Wendy, do you love people? Now, what Wendy does, first of all, her eyes kind of like light up. She's never had that question asked before. And she sort of sits back a little bit and reasons that I think he wants me to say yes. So I better say yes. And so she said, yes, Mr. Osing, you would typically call. Yes, Mr. Osing, I love people. And I go, that's terrific. So what I want you to do, Wendy, is I want you to tell me a story now, okay, that would show me and prove to me that you love Homo sapiens. This was the question that separated the ones who kind of like logically were trying to figure out where I was going, etc. And it gave me a story that was pretty superficial and didn't pump me at all, and it just kind of left me, cold like a fish, and they didn't do so well. But then there was the other person who would give me a story that was so rich with emotion and passion and empathy and truth and integrity that my jaw would drop, and it gave me what? Goosebumps. I got goosebumps from that story. That person, I would take in a heartbeat. I would hire that person. And if they had any issues around, the specific competencies and skills for the job, I would teach them that. We had training programs for that. What we didn't have is a training program that says, I'm going to train Wendy to love people, because you can't do it. You can train Roy to smile and have a smile on his voice, but secretly he hates you, right? You can train him to do that, but you can't train him to love you. You have to be born with it. At least that was my thesis. So we started doing this. And I have to tell you, it was remarkable, because and it took a while, of course, you can imagine, right? Because it was a large organization. After a while, the culture started to feel different. it started to look different. Our loyalty results, customer loyalty results, went through the roof. Our customer service results in terms of measurement went through the roof. And basically the referral system that we had really succeeded. And it translated in the long run into two things, right? Revenue growth, customer share growth, and the employee engagement in the business to the HR piece was just skyrocketed. All because we tried to find a gimmick to hire people that loved humans, and the goosebump approach worked like you have you have no idea. I remember sitting on a podcast with this HR specialist from New York City I'd say about a year ago, and I remember it because it just surprised me. I took her through what we're just discussing, and I'm looking at her and I'm seeing her facial expressions and her body language just really tightening up, right? Like she just was having a terrible time with this. And because she would say things, well, there's no proof. There's no scientific evidence. Blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, you're really having difficulty with this, aren't you? And she says, yeah, I can't believe it. She says, I've never heard. I mean, she was really pissed off. Okay. And I said to her, you know what? How about we just call it a day? I don't really think we can continue doing this because you're never going to be convinced, and I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just simply telling you what worked for me. And if you're having trouble with that information, that's on you. It's not on me. So why don't you have a good day? And we left. And she was the only one that's ever reacted to this notion of trying to hire people with this caring gene. I just had a different way of coming at it. You cannot get that from filling out a freaking questionnaire, okay? And all of these recruitment tools, online recruitment tools, I mean, they may be okay if you're focused on competencies and background, but they're not really helpful, okay, in terms of what you and I are just discussing. So that's the Goosebumps story.
And that is such a hummingbird effect. I mean, just asking this very, very simple question in the job interview led you to build what sounds like an amazing culture. So I think that is a fabulous, fabulous example. Now, Roy, please tell us how you measured that.
Well, we did a lot of customer perception research. Okay. So you have two sort of forms of measurement. You have internal statistics that you can measure, like, length of engagement and numbers of customers and revenue and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But if you really want to find out the sort of human attitude and caring attitude of employees, you basically have to ask the customer, because it's a behavioral question. And so our customer perception surveys were done basically based on a transaction, much as like is done today. So we'd follow up with the person and we would ask them questions, and I can't remember the exact questions, but they would be questions like, how did Roy make you feel? How did you feel about that? And it was an open-ended question. It wasn't, give me a 1, 2, 3, 4. It was just tell me how you felt. And we trained the people doing the surveys to basically try and follow up on that, right? Like be aware. By the way, the outsourced customer service company, they were also hired for Goosebumps. We didn't hire people that didn't have goosebump effect. If you didn't have a goosebump effect, you couldn't be a subcontractor. You couldn't be an outsourcer. You couldn't be a market researcher or customer research. So we asked a bunch of questions like that got at the feeling imparted, the integrity of the individual. How did you feel about that? Did you trust them? Did they talk about what is going on with you? Okay, because we didn't want pushers, right? This is not a pushing business about pushing what we supply. It was about creating demand and having people demand what we created. Completely different mindset in terms of how you run the business, right? And so, yeah, we did it on a regular basis. And the interesting thing is the people that we involved in the survey, they loved it. In fact, they started spreading the word that we were actually doing this. And can you imagine this large, quote, X telephone company? We all know how we felt about the telephone company back in the day. We didn't trust the telephone company. They pushed that. And so to actually have a phone call to ask people about these sorts of things was mind blowing. And they told their friends. And again, that helped us create this kind of like organism that was there to serve, as opposed to a hard rock that was pushing things. And that was a huge transformation that we had to make.
I just love the idea, Roy, in the business world. I think a lot of consumers are in the place of, oh, these big companies don't care about me. They don't ask about me. They don't care. They're just all about profit and all about, revenue. But the reason your culture and your company was successful with the big numbers comes down to caring and creating a place of care. And I think it's really neat to hear that, because it's not the perception that many people have of what's going on in these large organizations. And that's just a really neat thing to hear from you. And it sounds like they've continued that with the culture today. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. But the other thing I would say is it exists in every size of business. Like, I'd love to say that the small business retailer, kind of gets it. Some of them do, but unfortunately, I would say many of them don't. And in fact, I'm involved with a lot of them because I do a lot of consulting for small businesses. And when we go through this, I can tell, right? I can just see the eyes light up with the people that get it and are already doing it. So it's nothing that we have to do anything with. But there are others that we have to work through. I find that you get into the large, medium, and higher businesses. The problem that we have here, creating an army of advocates for Goosebumps, is those large companies are driven by textbook thinking, and they don't think they need any help. So you have this natural arrogance, and I will call that arrogance because I was a president of a large company. It is bloody arrogance, and it is also traditional leadership. Like, I talk about audacious leadership, which boils down to one principle. It's called leadership by serving around. Okay, it's about engaging with people, asking, how can I help? So the how can I help question is all based on getting rid of the grunge and the crap and the barriers that do what? Prevent them from executing my strategy. Execution drives numbers. And one way to get at that is you say, all right, what's going on? Now, the interesting the two benefits to this is when you solve one of the how can I help problems for the individual, they're happier, they're more productive, and they love you better. To the company, that translates into, guess what? Transactions and revenue and the $1 billion. And so to me, it's a win-win. And it lights fires, and people talk about, oh my God, Roy was in here for an hour today. And he was asking me what I cared about, what I wanted, what was bothering me. I mean, what's up?
Are you ready to find your own hummingbird effect and enable your brand to take flight? Wendy would love to chat with you. Schedule a 30-minute call with her to discuss how she can help transform your brand. Visit the link in the show notes to book your appointment, or send an email to wendy@hummingbird-creative.com. Take your brand to new heights. Schedule your quick 30-minute call today.
Roy, your intentionality for what you're doing is evident in everything that you've talked about. And Wendy, your question kind of sparked this, but how do you, or what advice can you give someone that's looking to make this change to be intentional and not just, of course, everyone wants the outcome to be more transactional and to improve their bottom line, but how do they get to that intentional starting point to make a good decision that their company cares about and their customers will care about.
So you have to employ Grandpa Roy's model. Okay. And Grandpa Roy's model is really simple. We've already been through how to create a strategy that's built to execute. Okay, because there's no sense talking about innovation unless you have that strategic context. Build your strategic game plan. Go to my website and my blogs. I've been working on this since 2002. Subscribe to my blogs. Go search it up. It'll tell you exactly how to build a plan, right? You have to do the strategic game plan that we talked about earlier, and there's lots of information around that you can do it. The second thing is you look at the execution element of that, and that's where the gold comes from. For example, that's where we hit on the notion of hiring for Goosebumps. It was a recruitment piece, right? That's where we hit on the notion of cleansing the inside of the operations, trying to get rid of the crap and the grunge. And we came up, that's where the cut the crap and the dumb rules thing came from, right? And so you have to get to that level. Don't start out with just doing it for the sake of doing it. It has to have strategic meaning. It has to be simple, and my process is really simple. I mean, that's why a lot of people have trouble with it, because they'll say to me, did that really work? Well, what they're really saying is it didn't follow a textbook and it's not complicated enough. So do the work. Okay, there's a lot more that we could talk about in this, but the process is simple, and that's the feedback. It's fun to do, and it's absolutely a necessity. Innovation must have a purpose. The purpose is your strategic game plan. So do the work. It's only 48 hours. Come on, you can give me 48 hours. Do the work, and that will lead to incredible things. And it works in practice. I mean, I had a guy a few weeks ago who was in the lawn cutting business come to me and said, "Roy, you got to help me. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. I want to build my business. I want to be creative, but I don't know what to do." And when I had a conversation with him, I mean, basic reason that he didn't know what to do is he didn't have a strategic game plan. And so we went back. I helped him develop it. And overnight, you could just see him. You go, the weight just went away. And now he's no longer in the lawn cutting business, because the only statement that we came up with put him in the business of being the only service partner who created and delivered property management development decisions or services for strata companies. You call them homeowner associations. So he chose homeowner associations as his target and decided that to be the only one, he needs to be in the business development business, not in the traditional sense, but in the sense where he could reach out to subcontractors for painting and lawns and all this sort of stuff, bring them together as a single point of contact for the strata president. And you have no idea. I mean, he's innovating within that every day, but it's that function, and he is getting a hummingbird effect, because everything he touches is now viewed as innovative just because of the way he's taken it to the client, and he's reaping the benefits. The translation is his top line is looking really, really good, but he's not motivated to do top line. He's motivated to do the work to get to the top line, and that's a big difference.
So when someone is working through that plan, how do you work through the how big do you want to be in 24 months piece, Roy? Because I see a lot of people spending the time that they need to spend on target market, trying to understand how they're going to meet their cravings, working on only statements. I see only statements called unique sales propositions. I see only statements being called a lot of different things, but trying to find that like differentiation. I see people spending time on this. I think, however, the how big do you want to be in 24 months? How do you work people through that piece?
The first comment I
Uh,
have to say is you never look at what your differentiation strategy should be. You never look at your target markets and what your brand should be unless you understand the answer to the first question, which is how big do you want to be? Look at strategy is a function of growth. Okay, it's a function of choice. And so the how big is a really interesting exercise because it's based on declaration without knowing.
right.
Because I'm a firm believer that innovation comes from ignorance. It doesn't come from knowing how to do it. If you know how to do it, what motivation do you have to be creative? You don't have any. Okay. And the fun I have with groups is that I'll give you an example. Say you're doing $1 million a year, and I'm running you through the how big, and I'm going to press you. If you're not perspiring, we're not doing a good job. You need to be sweating over this, okay? Because you're going to come up with something you have no idea how to get to, and I want to take you there. And so we go through. So I say, okay, what do you think? Can you do 5 million? And the first thing most of them will say, particularly the leader, goes, yeah, because 24 months out, figure out what the run rate on that is, right? It's a big number, right?
It's a big number.
So we go through that and we talk about, well, what is the art of the possible in order to get there without knowing the details? It gets down to me saying to the leader, okay, in the middle of the night, when you think about your business, where would you like it to be in 2 years? Why don't we just think about that and make that real? Okay, because unfortunately, most people will answer the question by, well, I don't have a trend line. We don't have any past history that would indicate, all the academic stuff that goes on. I'm not denigrating it. It just doesn't do the job, right? And so it's done in collaboration. And in the final analysis, the leader says, let's do 5. And I go around the room because everybody in that room is going to be held accountable for delivering that. So each of them has to, quote, I call understand and agree. So I will say to everybody around the table, do you understand and agree? If you say, yes, Roy, I understand and agree, we go to the next person. If you even pause, right? I'm just all over you and say, what is it? Is it that you don't understand it or that you don't agree with it? We have that conversation. It's the rest of the team's job to convince that individual that 5 million is the right goal. And so that's the process I use. So, right? So at the end of the day, 5 million, that's the target. And everybody's gasping and they want to go to the washroom and all that kind of stuff. Because that was a pretty interesting exercise. And I say, well done. Okay, now we got something to work on. Now we have a number. Now look this is exactly the opposite of every other planning process. You understand that, right? Every other planning process develops the plan and then the numbers. And they don't like the numbers, so they change the assumptions that got the numbers without changing the strategy, which is insane. You can't change assumptions, all right, and expect that the strategy is going to be the same. It won't. And so my process is really simple. Get the kids off the street. The number drives the character and the risk factor associated with the strategy. That's why we start with how big. So now we have 5 million as a target. Next question, where do you get it? That was who do you intend to serve and what do they crave? So you can see what's happening here. You don't have the right to talk about brand. You don't have the right to talk about any marketing program because we aren't there yet. It's a sequential process and it works. It will get you there. Like, I don't care what the mass market craves, all right? I don't care because what we're doing is coming up with a focused number of customer groups that we believe have the potential to deliver the 5 million. That's all who we care about, right? That's all it is. And so I disagree with you, Wendy. People don't talk about cravings that way. They talk about cravings outside of the context
Okay.
of growth.
Exactly. No, I
So
totally
that's where.
agree
So
with
the
you
next
now.
step is, how are you going to compete and win? I disagree with you, Wendy. There's nobody out there that gets it right. They start talking about differentiation and being the only. And by the way, I see very, very few people use only. They'll use claptrap, but they won't use only. But they start talking about that completely out of context of the first two questions. And that's where the problem is. And so you have to be sequentially minded in this process. If you care about getting to an answer that actually works, that you can innovate within, get high employee engagement within, because differentiation depends on the customers you're trying to attract, correct?
Yes.
It just does. So you want to be the only one that does what you do to those customers that you've chosen to serve and the cravings of those people that you've identified, because you believe if you do that, you will be able to achieve the 5 million. So you can see the connection. And one of the things that I do really, really well, because I'm an old guy and I got what you can't bullshit me, you just can't, is I can spot you a mile away if you're trying to be a tactical queen as opposed to a strategic one. I can spot, and I will not let you get away with it. I mean, I don't care what you're doing with AI today. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about your marketing programs. Put them aside. Let's do the work. And let's make the ones that you are doing relevant within a strategic plan. And let's delete the ones that aren't. I mean, we never talk about innovation as being deleting things. And yet it is. All right? Deletion is probably more important in terms of financial impact on a company than doing new things. And why is it important? It's important because you're opening up bandwidth when you remove work to do the relevant things you should be doing because you just identified it in your game plan. Now, the problem with deletion is a lot of the custodians of the past, my phrase, who have got those programs, they don't want you to take them away from them. Right. And so you have two choices. Either they go with the program, which is out, or they, I don't know, they accept the wisdom of the plan and they decide to go and do the relevant things. Yesterday's relevance is today's irrelevance. You just need to think about it that way. And deletion is the only way to be innovative within that construct. And nobody talks about this sort of stuff. Nobody talks about it, guys. I mean,
How
Roy,
often?
what was your runway from startup to $1 billion? What was your timeline for that?
I mean, the timeline, because the growth rate early on of the internet was a steep curve, and the fact that we had a lot of voice customers, right? We were able to capitalize on that relatively quickly. But I would think that we were probably, when we started out, like this wasn't a zero revenue company,
Right.
because it was a data company in the early stages. So we were doing probably 500 million at the time. Okay. So getting from 500 to $1 billion, was literally, I don't know. I'd want to say 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
So you got to think about
That's
a
good.
decade kind of thing, right? And that's why most companies, unfortunately, don't achieve that sort of growth, is because they give up on it, because it's
Right.
hard work. I mean, I learned early on that pain is a strategic concept. It is, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I had non-believers. I had people trying to make us fail. I had people who thought we were crazy and wouldn't give us any support. I mean, it was horrific. But you have to fight through it. And so, like, I'm giving you the time frames. I don't know if that's exactly right, to be honest, but
No,
it's
but I like the context of that. It puts it in perspective because you doubled sales, but it took time. And
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people think that the startup can just go
Right.
from day one, and it does take hard work.
So
I certainly understand that.
so the statistics I read for startups, because I agree with you 100%. I mean, 20% die in the first year. 50% of them are done in 5 years. Now, the interesting thing to me is this happens, okay? Stay with me on this. This happens despite the fact that we have experts promulgating how to run a successful startup using all the academic principles in the kit bag. Now, if those principles were so good and resulted in such amazing things, why do we still have a mortality rate of 50% in startups? You see, that's what I say to people that say, well, yeah, how come we're not doing blah, blah, blah? And I say, well, because first of all, I mean, we're still dying using those. So shouldn't we try something else? And so I've come up with this thing because I'm not against education. This isn't about that. It's about knowing when to put the textbook down. So I came up with that notion of putting the textbook down. It says, look, I know you're smart. I know you can do all that stuff. I think university has taught you to think and has taught you to solve problems. That's all I care about, right? And it's probably taught you to be adaptable and responsible and all those kind of things. Probably, maybe a bit more social. Oh, wait a minute. It could be a goosebumper. Who knows? Well, I get that. But what I'd like you to do is explore some new, simple hummingbird innovations that work in the real world. Okay, I say the real world, and they're proven. How can I talk to you like that? Because I took an early stage data company to $1 billion in sales. That's the proof point. Now, you may not believe me, and that's fair enough, but trust me, this stuff works. And if it works for an old Norwegian, it will work for anybody, right? And so, but you know what? That's a major stumbling block for me, is a momentum of the past, right? The framework of academia that people stick to, the social norms that want people to fit in and not fit out. All that stuff works against exactly who I'm all about and what the message I'm trying to spread. Because I've seen the results of doing things differently. And it's a wonderful world. You know what? I wake up in the middle of the night, you guys, right? And I think of a Bell distribution curve, right? It goes like this, right? We all know what the binomial distribution curve looks like because my degree's in math. So just show off a little bit. So it goes like that, right? So I wake up thinking, the people on the right-hand side of that distribution curve, they're superstars. They always will be. You probably don't have to do a lot with them. And the ones on the left, they're people that don't require any investment either because they've chosen to opt out. So let's now think about the majority of people in the glut around the y-axis and the x-axis, right? Well, that's where the majority of the people think. And I think with myself, I tease myself and I say, can you imagine if we could move everybody in that portion of the distribution curve 5 points to the right, 4 points to the right? Can you imagine? Now, what does that mean? That means people adopting the kinds of things that we're talking about, being creative and open and human and caring and loving and results-oriented and performance-driven. Don't ever forget that. Roy was not a pushover. He got the $1 billion not by being your friend, although I was, but we did it a different way. But can you imagine what would happen to society, to our personal lives, to business, right? It would just be, I would think, miraculous and remarkable. And so that is the sort of thing that I think about, and I'm disappointed, quite frankly, that the traction, and it's got to be on me because I'm the guy out there with Be Different or Be Dead. The traction has been difficult. It's just because of the stickiness of the past and the current processes that people follow and so forth. So I admire you putting the Hummingbird effect tag out there, you guys, but I want you to be on my team. We can do more with this,
I
right?
love it.
We do a
I love it.
Hummingbird, a goosebump thing, right? You can do more. I mean, I don't know.
It's funny because we've been in Culture World this morning and
Mhm.
did a internal survey and looked at the results this morning and talked about 16 personalities and all of that. So it's neat that you brought up the goosebump
Yeah.
thing. It's leading me down a path with my team for next week's
Good for
big
you.
team meeting.
You
So
know,
give
just
us
on that, I'm sorry, just on that, just try it. So the next time you're hiring somebody, ask them, Hannah, do you love humans?
I
Actually,
think I might say no.
or give them, and then I would know you're telling the truth. So I would go to the next.
it
You
might be
can't.
a dinner conversation in the house
I
tonight,
know
Roy.
you can't
I'm gonna
bullshit
ask
me,
my
Hannah. You can't.
family. So leave us with your number one piece of advice for a business owner or president that comes out of your learnings throughout the years.
Be different or be dead. It's as simple as
Love
that.
it.
But
Amen.
realize that there's so much behind that, and being different, again, is doing things uniquely that people care about. It's not about yourself. It's about other people. Find a way to be that special person or that special organization out there that delivers incredible value that nobody else does. Be that person, be that organization, be that culture.
Thank you, Roy. Now, will you please share with everyone where they can find out more about you and all of these wonderful things you've talked
Mhm.
about, including your blog and your book?
Sure. Well, come visit me. I'm on bedifferentorbedead.com. And I've got a blog on that. I've written 9 books or 7 books. So there's a page that talks about the books, and my latest one that you mentioned, the audacious, unheard-of ways took a startup to $1 billion, is in there, and it's organized in kind of a cool way. I think you don't have to read it, front to back, because there's a section on careers, there's a section on strategy, there's a section on marketing, sales, and business planning kind of thing. And so you can go in and out of that. So you've got that. I've got a quiz on my website. Hannah, you're on it now. Go to the
I
quiz.
am.
Go to the quiz. And it's a fun little thing to determine where are you on the be different or be dead continuum, right? Are you starting? Are you mature? Are you moving to that right-hand side of that normal distribution curve? And it's a fun way of you just doing a self-assessment. And at the end of the quiz, it will give you a printout, right, of your results. And my intent was pick the one that's red, because that means you're behind the others, and go focus on that and try and do some be different or be dead things. The quiz is laden with links. So if you don't understand the language, click the link and it goes to a couple of blog posts that explain it. So there's a lot of content there. Please subscribe to my blog. I've been blogging since 2002 on this stuff. It's rich, and I learn about it all the time, and it changes. And I blog every week. So there's lots of good content material there. But I guess the last thing I would just like to say, I also have an email, and it's roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm really happy to have a one-on-one conversation with anybody. I mean, I get emails after a podcast like this, for example, or say, hey, I listened to you on blah, 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 and I've done my only statement. Here's what it is. What do you think? What a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation and make a difference. And I go, okay, I got one. Let's do a few more of those, right? And so join me and Wendy and Hannah in our journey, because it is a journey, okay, to figure out ways of standing out, not fitting in a way that matters to other people. Can you do that for me? I'd appreciate it.
Roy, thank you so much for your time today. This has been amazing. I know the listeners are going to take so many nuggets from what you've said. I know I have today. So thank you so much. listeners, thank you so much for being with us today and giving us your time. And take Roy's many, many nuggets and go out and find your hummingbird effect.
Thanks for listening to The Hummingbird Effect with Wendy Coulter. We hope you found this episode valuable. Please be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more or to work with Wendy and her team, go to hummingbird-creative.com.